Moms are really good at turning babies into boys, but it is the dad's responsibility, the father's responsibility to turn that boy into a man. And I got to thinking, how does a weak boy become a strong man? It really can't unless you have a strong male figure in his life. And therein lies the problem. What I've learned is that big media, government, and the folks who try and exercise their absolute power in the attainment of more power have done a great job over the last 2 decades in eroding masculinity. So much so that they've actually termed the phrase toxic masculinity. Really, does toxic masculinity even exist, guys? I don't think it does. There is no such thing as toxic masculinity. You're either masculine or you're toxic. And I want to challenge you to offer me a different perspective. Because if you're masculine, then you're chivalrous. You're willing to open doors for people. You're willing to say your please and thank yous. You are willing to lend a hand if someone needs something heavy moved. You are willing to step in the gap to protect those who can't protect themselves. You are willing to walk on the sidewalk side when walking with a woman, on the street side of the sidewalk. You are willing to be a gentleman, be a servant, and to be a savage. That is a masculine man. Now, someone who's toxic is typically a nice guy. But nice guys are passive aggressive. Nice guys are not willing to open doors. You know who the nice guys are. And so I've realized that the government and big media has done a great job using sitcoms and movies to dumbify men, to make men look like big doofuses who can't get anything right. And if their wives and girlfriends didn't correct them, that they wouldn't even be able to tie their shoes. When you really think about how big media, TV, the movie industry portrays men, they show men as these lost and confused, oversized baby boys, these children. And in fact, a lot of women now treat their husbands and their boyfriends as their sons. And the one thing I tell guys all the time at the project is, you know, your wife did not marry you just to have another son. She wants a man who is confident, who is capable, who is courageous, who knows how to protect, who can provide, and who is always prepared for the worst case scenario. Doesn't mean they're living in the worst case scenario, but they know how to be dangerous. And that is very important. See, as we did the project, I realized that the project alone was not enough, that we needed to help the generation that's coming up. That if big media is using cartoons and television and movies and publications and social media to declaw and defang men while they're still boys, then maybe I need to do something to be able to build these boys up into men. And maybe I could help the fathers, along with the instructors of the project. We could help the fathers and the mothers in building masculine young men that are healthy and confident in their masculinity. Because there is no such thing as toxic masculinity. There are toxic men and there are masculine men, but there is no such thing as toxic masculinity. That is the reality. And so for many, many years, hundreds and hundreds of years, different tribes and cultures have always had a rite of passage for their young boys. And in many ways, it was the father and a group of men that he trusted and respected who took that boy once he became of age, around the ages of 13, 14, 15 years old, and put him through an experience that would be this rite of passage where he would cross this chasm from boy to young man and win a seat at the table for the other men to be able to pour into him over the weeks, months, and years to come, and to help develop him into a capable and confident man of that tribe as a future leader and elder. And if every generation looks after the generation that's coming up, then we can rest assured that those in power will always have a capable and confident man to stand in the gap, to protect. And make no mistake about it, friends, your life is better when you are impacting the life of others in a positive way. You will feel more fulfillment. You will have a greater sense of significance. In fact, significance and fulfillment is one of the 6 basic needs that a human has. And so if you're not feeling a sense of purpose, fulfillment, significance, impact, meaning, call it however you want, you will suffer through anxiety. You will feel depressed. You will feel like your life has no meaning. When you make a promise, keep it. Think about it. When you make a promise, keep it. How often do people make a promise to themselves or others and don't keep that promise? They flake out on their friends when something easier or more fun comes up. Or there's a little traffic, and so you decide you're going to flake out and not meet your friend who maybe, just maybe, wants to spend some time with you, because that time with you could be a moment of reflection for them because they're going through a hard time. And if you're wondering where personal confidence and self-esteem comes from, I can tell you this, that confidence and self-esteem is a byproduct of the reputation, the credibility that you have with yourself. And if you are a constant and consistent promise breaker, then you will unfortunately find yourself in a place of low self-esteem, low confidence, and you'll feel like an imposter. I found that a life of impact and fulfillment means that I have to march to the beat of my own drum. I don't have to look for the approval and validation of others around me. You've got your own set of core values. You've got your own character. You've got your own integrity if you take time to develop it. If you don't, then you are going to drift through life without meaning. And you're going to plug your umbilical cord into everybody else's definition of fulfillment and impact. And that is what's known as approval seeking, validation seeking, needing a pat on the back from someone else. The moment you stop seeking out other people's validation and approval is the moment that you've gained freedom and clarity. And when you have freedom and clarity, you will have greater impact and fulfillment. But if you're a man and you don't feel that you can protect and provide and stay prepared, you're always going to have this feeling of hollowness and emptiness inside you, because as men, it is factory installed for us to want to protect and provide and stay prepared. But if we're not taught this by our parents, by our fathers, by our uncles, by our older brothers, by the men in the tribe, then you will feel this sense of emptiness inside you that's unfulfilling. And here's why this is so important to you. This is so important because there is no game plan. There is no blueprint. There is no operations manual to becoming a man. It is tribal knowledge that has to get passed on from one man to another. Like, there is no how to be a man. I know there's a little article I wrote on how to be a man, but don't for a moment think that that's the game plan. Like, we are complex, and men before you and I have charted the way. And it is your job, my job, to seek out mentors, who know the way of man. Now, guys, I share this with you because if you are not prepared, if you do not feel that you can protect, if you are ill-equipped to provide, you will feel a sense of emptiness. Ego is your enemy. It creates blind spots and gives you an emotional limp. It's the only way I can say it. Your ego is your enemy, and it will give you blind spots. The people that have the most egos have the most blind spots, and they don't see their own flaws, and they see themselves as higher, more superior than others. And in fact, they are the ones that have the greatest amount of emotional limps, where they can't take any criticism, they can't take any feedback, because their ego is so strong. And I need you to understand what the ego does. It does two things. The ego will soothe and shield. The ego will soothe and shield. In other words, it will shield by repelling, saying, no, man, that person's wrong. Their criticism, their feedback is inaccurate. It's a shield. An ego will create this glass shield, not allowing you to take in criticism and feedback that can make you a better human. The ego is also something that will soothe you. So the ego does create blind spots. And the more blind spots you have, the more emotional limps you have. Create peace. Seek out peace, but be prepared to bring the violence when violence is the only option. And so I ask you, will you pass those skills on to your son of being courageous, of being a servant, of being a protector, a provider, of being prepared? Because if you don't, then many, many years from now, when you and I are gone, there will be a generation of even weaker men who will not stand up to a violent person like that on an airplane, who will not stand up to government that is constantly and consistently looking to erode your freedom. We will have a generation who will not stand up as our constitutional rights get taken away, and the United States becomes a country like all these other countries with higher taxes and limited freedom, limited access to free speech. So that is a responsibility you have and I have, friends. So that's something that I want you to really think about. I highly encourage you to read the book, Raising a Modern Day Knight. I massively encourage you to bring your son to the Squire program if he's of 13 to 15 years old. And I encourage you to be that guy who's going to be a role model to not only your son, but his friends and the community around you, because one of us is all that's needed in one community to spark the fire of other courageous men.